and welcome to our 5th Rapala Beyond the Bite show tonight on Flathead Mickey. So we've had a lot of good feedback on the show, so we're gonna keep doing them. But tonight on Flathead are pretty much bycatch for me, and I don't catch a lot of them. But little fun fact is, I've got a 36-year-old flathead record. So young Tim Morgan fishing the mouth of the Brunswick River back in 1989. We used to catch some live mullet with Steve. We'd rig them up live, and I think I've got a 5.25 kilo flathead on 6 kilo line, which is still current Australian record. So there we go. But apart from that, not really that good. So tonight we're going to get your much better half in, Mel, who's a great flathead fisher woman, and she'll be hosting the show with you.
Yep, that sounds good, mate. So yeah, basically same as usual. We're going to go through tonight. We've got a great prize pack to give away. So we've actually got a great prize pack. It's obviously same sort of stuff. Consists of all our great Crush City plastics that's going to suit your flatties. We've got a Crush City shirt, Crush City cap. We've also got some of our VMC gripper jig heads. And so usual same thing with all our prize packs. So tonight's pretty simple. All you need to do is go onto either Facebook or YouTube and put down your favourite Rapala lure that you like to go and chase flat out in. It's pretty simple, so make sure you go and do that to go in the draw to win that prize pack. Tonight we also, if you've got any questions, anything to do with flatties, put some questions down, and at the end of the show, me, Tim and Mel will hopefully answer your questions for you. Same as what we always do in our show, we're just going to go through all of our tackle that we like to use, so our rods, reels, lines, all that kind of stuff. Something a little bit new tonight, we're going to show you just some flathead locations and just some areas to look for, or what to look for, and how to approach them. And then another cool thing, we've got some of our pro staff and at the interviews with them. So I've done a bit of a talk with Paul Worsling, talking more about the southern species of flathead. And Mitchie, our VMC brand managers, had a chat to Jason Didio to talk about chasing flathead on bait and using some of our VMC products. So let's start the show and let's get into our go-to tackle. So basically we'll go into our go-to tackle, and as like always, we just talk about the rods, reels, lines, all that kind of stuff that we like to use when we go chase flatties. So Mel can start off on the rods that you like to use when we're going chasing the flatties.
Yep. I use 13 rods. I usually take 3 rods every time we go out chasing flatties. I'll take a light medium, and a medium rod. Depending on the depth we're fishing, currents, all that, we take into consideration to what I'm going to use. So I probably use the light rod more than anything. I'll get to very soon what lures I use on them, but that's probably my main rod I would use. And then my light medium, probably second after that. And I use a medium rod for the deep water. Yep. So they're probably the 3 rods. And I like to have a different lure on each rod, so it's just easy to grab, depending on where we're fishing, what bait could be in the area to what I'll use.
And I'm pretty much, just, as Mel said, exactly the same. Probably more like the light stuff is when we're using our smaller baits, our smaller Crush City baits, so anything in that 1/8, 1/6 sort of range. And then obviously as we up the size of our lures or the size of the jig heads, that's basically when we'll up the specs on the rod. So as Mel said, medium light. And then as you get into that deeper water stuff, probably one of the key things about it, one of the things with flatty rods is having that lighter tip, but to be able to work the lures, some of those lighter lures easily. But it really probably, the main thing would have to be a fast action rod. So you really want, flatties have that sort of a little bit of a tough mouth, and you want to be able to jam the hook into them. So that's sort of something that when you go and choose a rod to have a think about. We don't do a huge amount of it, but when it comes to trolling, another thing is when talking about lighter rods, even a little bit shorter rods. So most of the time we're using 7 foot, but sometimes when we go trolling, we probably use more like that 6/8 sort of thing. But the key with that is, again, is that really light tip, because generally you are going to be fishing smaller lures like these 50 mil sort of style lures, they have really small hooks in them, so you want that light tip to help aid in the lure actually giving it action, but also when you do hook a fish, you're not going to pull the hooks on a thing. So there's some of the things with rods. Lines, what sort of like, so line wise, Mel, deep water stuff?
Yeah, look, I like to use the Suffolk 832 for its abrasion resistance, especially when fishing the deep, because you are casting into rocks. So you want that resistance from scuffing, I guess, against the rocks, and potentially big fish around those rocks too. So you want something that's going to be pretty strong and stand up.
Yeah, most of the time. Yeah. And all, again, with the 832, that's probably more in that heavy sort of tackle, as Mel said, in that deeper water. But most of the time, we're fishing sort of like that lighter class line. So
about 10 pound.
Yeah.
When we're fishing deep.
We've actually got a new line. We've probably spoken about a few times in our shows. So we've got that Suffolk Eggy. It's actually a line designed for squid fishing, but it's actually really thin diameter line for its poundage. So as you can see there, 17 pound, it's equivalent to about 6 pound in the old scale. So really thin line. Probably the good thing about it, flatties, you want to be able to cast a long way away from the boat, especially if you're in that really shallow water. And that thin diameter line obviously aids in getting that cast a long way from the boat. So they're probably the two lines that we mainly use. As far as leader, look, we mainly use that Suffolk and Visi line. So anywhere from 8 pound right through to 20 pound if we're fishing that deep water or chasing those big fish. So they're probably like the two main things as far as lines and reels. Mel, what reels do, like obviously we use similar reels, so
yeah, on the light and the medium light, run about a 2500 reel, just spin reel on those rods, and generally a 3000 on the deeper models. It doesn't matter, you can still fish the deep with the 2500, but yeah, I just have the 3000 there, so I use it.
Yeah, a little bit more line capacity, but something I didn't touch on, and obviously something I really like to do, is chase the big flatties on big glide baits and all that kind of stuff. So I do have a bait cast set up, so something around that 7.4, 7.6 medium heavy sort of rod. Again, has a little bit softer tip just to help work that lure, because I actually obviously when you want the lure to twitch, I'm actually using the reel to impart the action to get the lure to glide. So we do use a bait cast every now and then, but again, probably jumping up into that 20 pound class in your braid and 20 pound in your leader. So
yeah, and finding too, using the lighter rods, you can get which we will talk about soon. The small plastics we throw, you can get that more realistic twitch and movement in them, which gives them a more realistic look when you're swimming them. And I have tried a couple of different rods in the past, and I found the doughy rods, as you said, a faster tapered rod, it just doesn't set the hooks that great. So it is important to have a bit of power in the tip of that rod.
Yeah, well, that's it. As I said, like a fast action. So tip soft enough, but the rod's actually fast straight away, so it helps set the hook. Yeah, that's cool. So they're our sort of basically the tackle that we like to use. So now we can go into talking about our go-to tackle. So I'll start off. Probably the two main plastics I really like to use. Mel's probably got one of them, but I really like to throw paddle tails for the flatty, especially this time of year. The bait through winter is a lot smaller, but now the bait starts getting a little bit bigger, and you start sort of targeting those fish that have come down the system. But one of the ones that is one of my favourite through the whole Crush City range, and one that probably I spent a lot of time designing, was a heavy hitter. But that little 3-inch heavy hitter is just a gun bait this time of year. Like it's awesome for fishing all those sort of weedy edges, those sort of muddy drop-offs, all that kind of shit. That it really imitates that little tiny mullet, potty mullet, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that little 3-inch heavy hitter, and I'm someone who really like. If you talk about colours, white would be probably up there. Was one of my favourite colours in clear water. But as far as flooding's concerned, bright colours are always really good. So generally, when you're sort of fishing for floodies, you want to try and find that clean water. So if you are finding that clean water, you know that white colour's always really good in that little 3-inch heavy hitter. And when we do go and fish that deep water, I don't mind. I do jump up to the 4-inch heavy hitter, and also we've got that big 5.5-inch heavy hitter. If there is big mullet around, or I'm specifically targeting a big fish in real deep water, I'll use our 5.5-inch heavy hitter. Something that we've only just released that after this year, and through testing, I've had some great sessions on them, and I think Johnny Costello's loves this lure as well. It's been really good for him in the last few comps he's done. But again, that 375-inch suspect. So it's a paddle tail plastic, but it's a lot more finesse. So it has a lot thinner tail wrist on it, like a lot smaller paddle in the back, and it's got a really tight little shimmy. So again, talking about that bait that's in the system, when you get that white bait or that bigger white bait that comes in through some of the mouths of the systems at the moment, this suspect, even in the small one, imitates that sort of white bait really, really good. So through testing, and it was a colour that we brought out in our heavy hitter, but I definitely wanted to have it in our 375-inch suspect, is that ogre colour. It's something about chartreuse in floody lures that's really good. It has that contrast back on it with that browny sort of coloured back. So something to definitely go and have a look at again. Same sort of area you're fishing with that paddle tail. But it's a bit more of a finessey thing. The heavy hitter's got a really big action, and you probably use that a bit more in a bit discoloured water. Whereas a suspect is great in that really clear water because it's a little bit more finessey and all that kind of stuff. So they're my two favourite plastics I like to use. Jumping through to like hard bodies now, and something that Rapala's had out for quite a while, and it's a bit of a favourite for a lot of people. And it's a really unique bait. If you haven't really seen one before, it's called the ripstop. I really like to use the bigger one, the 12 centimetre one in the shallow. It's great in that really shallow water. And as you can see on the tail there, it's got that unique boot tail in the back. So what this does, it is actually a jerk bait. So you can use it as a normal bait and just slow roll it and hit the bottom, but I like to actually twitch the lure. And what that boot does, it actually stops the lure instantly. So when you twitch that lure, you know, it gets that side-to-side action really well. But the minute you stop twitching, a lot of jerk baits, when you stop, it'll actually they will glide forward a little bit. Whereas this will actually dead stop. And if you've got a flathead or anything chasing it, it pretty much stops right in their face, and they don't really have a choice. It's like a reaction. They're going to just crunch it straight away. So something that's really cool is that ripstop. As I said, there's two sizes in it, a 9 and a 12. I mainly use the 12 in the shallow, but it also does come in a deep in both versions of it. So something to check out, something new, and I've had a bit of success. I've got some good fish up the Pipamar about a month ago on it, which is going to hit stores a little bit later in the year, probably around late October, coming from the 13 stable, and it's the Loco Special. So again, comes in a shallow and a deep. Again, I probably tend to use the shallow a lot more. Comes in quite a big range of colours. This is probably one of my favourites, called Pinky. But again, this has a really great jerkbait action. So really erratic jerkbait. It's got a really good side-to-side action in it. So something to remember and check out when they finally hit stores is that Loco Special. And lastly for me, as I said, not something that me and Mel do a lot, but we do it in a classic every now and again when we're sort of struggling on catching fish on the flats or something like that. And look, I'm not going to be someone that's I'm not very good at it, and you think that trolling's quite easy, but trolling is quite an art. So that little 5 centimetre jack deep, is a deadly little trolling lure. So, as I said, one thing that's cool about it, as you can see, that bib, you've got that square bib. So what that's designed for is if it is banging on the bottom, it actually deflects cover really well. So something to check out. And again, when you troll for flatties, generally most of the time you are fishing that really small, that, as I said, something around that 50 mil. And the thing gets down to about 2.5 meters. So it's a really good bait to fish on those, not so much up on top of the flats as such, but it's sort of like when you come off those transitions where the water starts dropping off. So they're my favourite lures. Mel?
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay, this would be up there with probably one of my very favourites, which should be the 375 jerk. And as the saying goes, if it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use. But I love chartreuse, been using it for years. And I've probably caught more flathead on that particular lure than anything else. Especially in the classic where you're chasing numbers. So that's where I've caught, ample amount of numbers of flathead, but also larger flathead as well. So the way I like to fish this is just casting. Like Mick often says, I outfish him and whatnot, and I sometimes put that down to maybe a little bit more finesse than some, I watch him sometimes, he's sort of like this, whereas I just sort of give it nice little twitches. After every twitch, I pause for a couple of seconds because 9 times out of 10 that play's going to hit it when it's sitting completely still. Just a couple of rotations, twitch again, pause. And I use generally a 1/6 with a size 2 hook most of the time, unless I'm fishing really shallow, then I might go to a 1/8 with the size 2. However, I find the 1/6 with the size 2 hook is probably what I use 9 times out of 10. So 2.0, sorry. Awesome little action. They're very soft, these lures, so the action on them is like outstanding, really. So other than that, my next favourite lure would be the 3-inch imposter. So used this more and more the last 2 years. Was lucky enough to sort of get to fish this when we were trying the lures out before they were even released, and God, they catch. In the sort of more shallow areas where the water clarity is really clean, I did really well with the yabby colour, especially around those yabby banks and whatnot. However, I use 1/4 ounce jig head on these with the 2 to 3.0 size hook. Just depends on the depth, again, where we're fishing. And current comes into that as well. If there's a bit of current in the area where we're fishing, if we're fishing where the sort of banks come down, there's current moving, I'll go a little bit heavier. The way I fish these is pretty much just slow roll them. The little legs move on them like this, and the tail has a little flick, so it's very realistic. Again, probably one of my favourite colours, chartreuse and yabby, and I'll get on to the next one soon, and I have a different favourite colour in that as well. So, but these, from what I hear, is everyone talks about them. So it's by far one of the better flatty lures getting around. This is probably my favourite to use in the deeper water, which is the 4.5 imposter. Now I'll rig this on a 5/8 jig head on a 6 to 7.0 hook. Just remember, when you're flatty fishing, more hook exposure is better, because as we've spoken about, their mouths are very tough. So you want as much hook exposure as possible so you can set that hook. When I cast these into the, just say for example in the seaway, you're casting up to those rocks. So pretty much as soon as that hits water, I'm flicking my bar alarm and hopping immediately for 2 reasons. One, so I don't get snagged up in the rocks. Second, a lot of those big flatties are sitting right on the base of those rocks. So I want to grab their immediate attention when that hits the water. So I hop it immediately, bring it back, slow roll, let it drop back and pause when I know I'm sort of free of the rocks. And often, as I go to twitch again, that's when I'll be on. So great lure. I'll even throw this sometimes in 2 feet to a metre. So you can fish them really any depth. However, because they are made from TPE, they are a little bit slower sinking, so that's why it's good to use that little bit of extra weight in your jig head. So Swamp Dog, that's my favourite. That got me my PB Flatty last year. Big fan of it. However, yeah, I'm not too biased on the colours, but that has worked really well for me.
And that lure is probably the last couple of years since we've had it has caught most of our 80 plus centimetre fish. Like every time we fish, like as Mel said, we do fish that sort of those seaway areas, those deep water areas. That one in particular, in that Swamp Dog colour, has caught us more 80 centimetre fish than most of the lures that we've used in the last few years. So,
well, you go back to what you're confident
100%.
in, and it's worked very well.
Yeah, so that's our the Rapala lures and what we like to use. So now we'll go to a little video on the suspect, and we'll get into it.
Alrighty, good morning ladies and gentlemen. We're out here on the sand flats this morning, had a cracking session on some flathead using none other than the Rapala Crush City Customs, the suspect here. Quite a beautiful little paddle tail plastic, perfect little snack size for all sorts of species such as flathead, bream. I've been getting some bass on them in the skinny creeks last season. Really good little lure, little subtle little action on it. Salt infused as well as a bait fish scent, so no need for extra scent or anything like that. Allows the predators to just kind of hold on for a little bit longer and allow you to hook up. This time of year all the systems kind of get flooded with loads and loads of bait fish such as mullet, prawns and that sort of thing. These little Crush City suspects do a really good job at imitating a little bait fish, especially on these sand flats, hopping it off the bottom really subtly. The fish just can't resist it. So definitely run it on some spin gear, some light braid, some light leader. You can go from anywhere from an 1/8 ounce all the way up to a 1/4 ounce on these flats, depending on your current tide and conditions. And you can be in for a really good time. So really fun little way to get out on these little sand flats, low tide, and get into some quality fish, and even get a feed as well. Yeah, that is a nice one. So if you haven't already, I'd highly recommend having a look at the suspect colour range, picking a few colours, and jumping onto these sand flats and having a great time, because the flathead just crack them. Out of here.
Yeah, so going on about some tackle tips. My tackle tips, and something that you probably see me regularly, I'm always someone that tinkles with tackle. I've always got to do something like that. And it's something that we use a fair bit, and as you've probably seen when we were showing you some of the lures, is I always dress up my jig heads, especially when targeting flatties. I really like that contrasting colours between the lure and the as you can see here on that one I showed you previously, our 375-inch suspect, and the jig head. They are our VMC grip R jig heads, but I do like to trick them up and dip them, as you can see in the tackle box in front of me. That's just sort of some of the ones that I've done up before we go for a flatty fish in an array of sizes. So if you haven't tried it, definitely give it a crack, because I do believe sometimes that is a great trigger for flatties, is to have that contrasting head. So if you haven't tried it before, go and grab yourself some grip R jig heads. Go and grab some of that the paint, it's like the powder paint stuff. It's pretty simple to do. Cigarette lighter and heat it up, dip it in the paint, and pretty much you can come up with that whatever colour pattern you like. So that's one of my tips. My other tip would be, as I was talking about trolling before, and even sometimes when we want our lures to have that more natural presentations, another little tip I like to do is when I'm fishing, say, some of those smaller lures, or as I said, trolling, I like to put a bite leader on. So I like to still have that lighter, as I was showing before, that lighter, thinner line. I do like to fish sometimes like 6 and 8 pound leader, but obviously when you're targeting flatties, they have that really raspy mouth and all that kind of stuff. So I may run like a 10 centimetre little bite leader of say 12 or 15 pound, and that saved us many a time, especially when you're trolling. Because one thing when you do troll, you obviously want that lighter line, that lighter leader to help aid in that lure swimming properly. Because obviously if you have like a 10 or 20 pound leader on such a small lure, the lure's not really working properly. So that's just another tip that I would say if you're into your trolling, or if you want to have that more finessey approach when the bite, if you're in that really clear water or the fish are a little bit shut down, still running that really light leader, but just running that little 10 centimetre bite leader. So that's probably my tip for this one. So now we'll get into Mel's tip.
Okay, my biggest flatty tip I can probably give, especially if you're not fishing alone, if you're fishing with someone else, I always say to Mick when we get out in the water, I say, and we're about to cast, I say, what are you using? He might say, 5-inch jerk or whatnot. I will always throw something completely different. I figure that something may work, something won't. So why not just see what's working by throwing 2 different lures? And of course, if one is getting a bite and the other person isn't, you know what is working, depending on what bait could be around. However, a couple of times when we've been out there and I've caught a couple and Mick's still sort of donuts, I guess. I'll see, he's quite discreet to change over. He doesn't like to show me that he's changing over lures, but he does it, and vice versa. That may not be the case if it's a hot bite. They might, bite on anything you're throwing. However, I think it's great to throw something different than what your other fishing co-angler is using, because that way it really gets you to gauge what's working and what isn't. So yeah, I just think that's
it is a good tip, because as you said, like there is a lot of times when you go out in the water and you may be throwing your favourite lure all the time, but if you do have someone with you and they are throwing something different, it might change the day. You might actually start catching fish, because of that reason. So yeah, I think and
it saves a bit of time too in changing things up yourself. If you can work together like that, it's definitely beneficial.
Yeah, cool. So now that we've spoken about a bit of that, we might head into a segment, as I said, we haven't really done before. We're going to run through some areas to target. So we're going to put up some areas in our local waterway and show you sort of some areas and how to approach them. Cool. So we've got the first photo to come up. All right. So this is, as we were talking about before, fishing that deeper water. So entrances, all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, this is our local waterway. So this is a seaway. So first of all, I'll just say that number 1 area. So that area there is a kind of run-in tide. The reason why I put it up, as the water runs down that seaway wall, it obviously runs around the corner of the wall, but because you've got that bend in the wall, it actually creates a big eddy there. So the water actually backs up on itself and creates like basically a circle of water heading back the other direction. So it's one of those areas where bait fish will sit in or get disorientated, and it's sort of one of those areas that I would definitely go there and have a look at when you've got that tide running in. So as I said, it's probably more of an area for the flathead also to sit in water hasn't got that huge amount of current in it either. So that would be looking at that area, that picture, that number 1 area. Number 2, so basically along that rock wall there, you've got deep water pretty much tied up against that rock wall. But there's a couple of areas to look at when you go and fish that area, like an area like that. So you've got obviously those rocks, and then generally the water tapers off quite quickly. So you can fish it a couple of ways. You can obviously, most people would just generally fish that deep water, so it's just a matter of putting on, say, a big imposter on a heavy jig head, and basically drifting with the current directly underneath the boat. And one of the key things when you're doing that is finding the bottom first and just lifting the lure off the bottom. So it's not fully dragging the bottom, it's basically just going to be sitting, the lure's actually just going to be sitting above the bottom. And if you look at your sounder, you can lift it up and down if you see rocks or whatever, but 9 times out of 10, the flatty, that lure's coming towards them, that natural ambush thing that the flatty gives them, they'll actually just come up and eat that lure. So that's probably one of the first things in that deep water. But the second thing would be, and Mel, you could probably talk about it because it's how we fish it a fair bit, the rock wall, how the rocks are. So
Yeah, look, generally when you're fishing the rock wall, they are going to be sitting, it helps firstly to have a good pair of sunglasses, because you want to be able to see through that water. Because there are little sand patches there at the base of the rocks. That's ultimately where the flatties are generally going to sit, in those sand patches. So it helps to have sun as well, so you can see them. When it's overcast, they're very hard to see. So yeah, just cast along those sand patches. Generally, try and keep your lure always tight to the bottom, because there's so much current in that area. The flathead will be sitting tight on the bottom, not up. So it's pointless having your lure like a metre off the bottom. Not to say they won't come up and grab it, but generally you want it sitting on the bottom and just slow hopping it across there. So yeah, the sand patches, they will sometimes sit on the base of the rocks. I have caught fish on the base of the rocks. However, most of the time they'll be in those patches.
So, and then probably number 3 is fairly similar to number 1, but number 4, just that area itself. The reason I put it up there, it's actually a really deep hole there. So through that sort of springtime here locally, a lot of the fish obviously move to the mouth of the river system to spawn, and generally through the night they will obviously do their thing, or they'll feed up, but they'll go and sit in those really deep holes. So that number 4 is more showing you about finding those really deep water, like pretty concentrated areas, because it is only a small area through there, but the fish will get in quite deep water. So that's it for the that interested. So we'll move to the next slide. So the next one, again, it's more talking about fishing those flats, or those high rise areas on the flats. Generally talking about this is more looking at those areas. This is obviously at low tide. So that area number 1, no, it's obviously number 1, 2, 3, 4. So all those areas are basically out of the water at low tide, but at high tide, those high spots are great areas to go and target on top of the tide, where all the bait will get up on top of those flats, and you'll generally find those kind of areas where you'll find some really big flathead, sort of that are out of that, off that spawn period or whatever like that. They'll sort of move onto those flats after they've done their thing in the deep water. They'll go and sit on those really high spot areas. With number 1, it's only a fairly new sandbank through that area there, but it's a lot of big fish have been sitting there. But as you can see there's a little tiny channel just to the left of that number 1. So obviously those fish on the high tide will be up on that high spot, but as soon as that tide drops off, you want to sort of target those little tiny channels, as you can see there in that where that number 1 is. Number 2 and 3, probably an area where we've caught some of our real big ones, and great for throwing big glide baits and really big hard bodies, all that kind of stuff across those areas. Again, mainly targeting them at high tide.
And people, experienced fishers would realise this at Chase Flatties, but they do sit in very, very shallow water too. So, I've seen Mick catch I think it was a 90, in 1.5 foot of water. So don't be afraid to sort of throw your big swim baits in those shallow channels too.
And as just quickly, I asked about this, a lot of those areas too, as you see, there's not that visible structure as far as big weed beds or anything like that. A lot of it's basically just pure sand, big yabby banks. So the fish are up there. There's a lot of, obviously, the whiting, the gar and all that get up on those sort of areas. So that's why those big floodies get up on that sort of stuff. So definitely something to go and check out your local waterway. If you have something similar to those scenarios, go and have a look at those kind of areas. So we'll go to the next slide. So this is a bit more of more about channels, and again, similar scenario as I was talking about with the flats. You've got all those high spots through all those channels, but this is probably more about talking about like number one, that area in particular. Obviously, as you can see, those big weed flats and everything in front of it, there's a little tiny channel that runs through that weed flat there, or through that flat there. So it's a great area to get in on the start of the last of the run out tide to get in there, or obviously before the tide fills up is to get into those sort of channels like that, because obviously all those fish that are sitting on those flats, they've got to fall off into those channels. So similar scenario with number 5 and number 3. Number 5 would probably be one of the most popular channels up there in that area. It's one of those ones you actually go and sometimes you go and get stuck inside that channel, and you can't get out of it until the tide comes back in. So yeah, looking at those kind of areas. And then if you like trolling, probably the best thing is to go into those areas on the low tide, so you can find out where those little channels are. So when you want to go and do your troll runs, near number 2 there, again, there's another one of those sort of areas you can stay in and troll that area on the bottom of the tide. So going into, probably one of the best things to do is once you get into your floaty fishing, is go and check out the areas that you're going to fish on low tide, because then you'll be able to see, as I said, where the channels are, where the high spots are, where there's broken bottom, because where that broken bottom is generally on the high tide, that's where those fish will get up and sit on the edge of the weed edges, or where there's like real patchy parts of weeds, those floaties will go and sit amongst them, because obviously all those weed beds, they just hold bait, and that's why the floaties are up there.
But also, if you see a lot of stingray activity,
Yep.
they'll be around those areas too, and they actually sit in there, those dark patchy holes stingrays have made. Sort of a little bit incognito, I guess. They hide in those dark patches. So any of that different coloured sand, there's good chance there's floaties around there too.
Cool, so we go to the next slide. So this one's a fairly common one, so just your creek now. So it's fairly self-explanatory. You've got your main channel, and then you have these main little creek drains or anything that run off those main channels. So pretty much getting around the last couple of hours of run out tide, you want to go and position yourself casting into where that number 1 spot is. So on the running tide, when it's been low tide or that running tide, you'll find the fish will sort of position themselves on the left of that number 1, where the bait are going to start moving in, because the water comes in from that right hand side. The fish will sort of position themselves there, but generally as a rule, run out tide's the best time to go and target this kind of area. So we'll jump to the next slide. Again, talking about drains, similar to creek mouths. So this is just an area on the way up towards the jumping pin area. And as you can see, all those number 1s, you've got those big flats that come out of those islands there. So all that water's got to come off all those flats into that main deep channel. So position yourself, targeting all those main drains on the run out tide. Again, if the tide's running in, same sort of scenario, you sit there and do that. Number 2 is just actually it's a little creek that runs out through there, and there's a little flat in front of it. So again, I was talking about those high spots. On the high tide, the fish will position themselves up on those high spots, and the bait will obviously move its way into that little creek, and then as the water drains off, they're in prime position for all those bait that's going to come out of that sort of area. Number 3 is pretty much similar. You're in the main channel and you've got a big sand, like obviously weed flat, and the water drains off, because where that is there, the water runs basically to the bottom of the screen on the run out tide. So it's another great area where you're fishing more of a drop off. So it's a little bit deeper water, 2-3 metres of water there, targeting that kind of area. And the number 4, talking about trolling. So when the tide gets up high, it's a great area to troll. And one thing that's good about trolling, if you you want to find fish, it's a great way to go finding fish. And then you can get into that area and you can troll around that area and you can generally find concentrations of fish in that area. Obviously the key is finding bait. All right, we'll go to the next one. So just mangroves, as I said, going there and checking out your area on the bottom of like the bottom of the tide, so you can see those kind of things. Because obviously, when you, as you can see on the right hand side, once that basically back creek sort of area is flooded, you don't get to see what's on the bottom. So number one, I'm just showing you on the bottom of the tide, you've obviously got those little snake drains. So it's a great area to target right on the bottom of the tide, so you've still got the last little bit of water coming off those little tiny flats. Number two would be on the top of the tide. So obviously you've got that little creek drain, so it's a natural little form of a, basically like a riverbed where the bait would move in. So the flatties will usually position themselves up on that top, those high spots in that area. So that's just another great area. And then number three, I'd put that there just to show you there's a great like area to troll along, because you've obviously got a little bit deeper water on that bank that you can troll up and down that area to find where those fish are through on the high tide. So we'll jump to another one. And then lastly, obviously all the river systems have man-made structure to some degree, whether it be rock walls, you know, obviously retaining walls, bridges, all that kind of stuff. And really it just comes down to is they break up. I think probably the biggest key is it breaks up the water flow, all that kind of stuff. It's an area where bait fish feel comfortable. But one thing you want to look at is, as I say, you're looking for those break lines. So if you've got a rock wall as such, and you've got little areas that have little pockets of sand, or you have rocks that stick out that create a little bit of an eddy, those flatties will sit in those sort of main areas like that. Again, bridge pylons, fish will sit on the backside of the bridge pylons or down low on the bottom.
And any trees
Yeah.
in the water, they hold bait fish, they'll be sitting around them as well.
So yeah, that's pretty much just more so showing that all those man-made areas will hold bait and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's pretty much all it is when it comes to all things about flatty. So now we're going to head over to our trophy hunters and see how our kids are going in the trophy hunters segment. I'd like to introduce you to Rapala's new Crush City Customs, the Jerk. The Jerk has been designed to imitate bait fish like pike, whitebait and garfish. Jerk is a 3.75 inch soft plastic jerk shad. The Jerk has been designed to have a streamlined body, which means you don't need as much weight to get the plastic to the bottom. It also provides a much more natural presentation when you hop and jerk the plastic, and it produces a lot more movement in the tail. The buoyant material enables the plastic to stand on its head at rest, imitating a feeding or injured bait fish. Each plastic is scented with fish powder and has salt impregnated in the lure, which adds to action and flavour. The Jerk comes in 8 fish catching colours, from your natural bait fish patterns like whitebait through to your high contrast colours like chartreuse glow. So there's a colour in the range that's going to suit any fishing situation. So the Crush City Jerk can be rigged multiple ways, from your standard jig head through to our new VMC hidden weight system. So if you're looking for a soft plastic jerk shad that's durable, plenty of action and built-in scent, make sure you check out Rapala's Crush City Custom, the Jerk, because it will crush it. Crushed it. Crushed it. Crushed it again.
As this month's episode is about Flathead, we'll be looking at this year's Flathead entries in the Rapala Rookies app. So far this year we have had 85 entries in the Rapala Rookies app. Here are those entries. The top lures that have been used on those 85 Flathead are the Crush City 2.5 inch Creeper with 36 catches, the Crush City 2.75 inch Suspect with 19 catches, and the Crush City 3 inch Imposter with 16 catches. Again, the soft plastics are the top pick amongst the rookies. The most popular colours were, in the Creeper, colours like Bloodworm, Purple Haze and Motor Oil. In the Suspect, Pearl Watermelon, Neon Pearl and White Bait. And in the Imposter, Bloodworm and Pearl White. We now have a three-way tie for first place for Rookie of the Year. Henry Weeks, Thomas Weeks and Harper Ireland with 11 badges to their name. Some rookies are closing the gap on the leaders. Lewis Campbell, Brax Watson, Angus Weeks and Hayden Land all have 10 badges, some close competition. With only 3 months left until the competition ends, be sure to go and get some Crush City from your local tackle shop and get out there and crush it.
Let's have a look at some of the trophy size flathead that have been registered into the Trophy Hunters app this year. At the top of the ladder so far, we have Peter Hancock with a 94 centimetre flathead on the 3 inch Crush City heavy hitter in colour Ogre, followed closely by Ethan with a 92 centimetre flathead and Thomas with a 91 centimetre flathead. We've had a total of 14 trophy size flatheads so far registered in the app, and the top lures have been the Crush City Jerk with 4 fish, the Crush City Creeper with 3 fish, and the Crush City Imposter with 3 fish. So with only 3 months left in the comp this year, go out and get yourself a pack of Crush City soft plastics or a Rapala hard-bodied lure. Download the Trophy Hunters app if you haven't already done it, and get out there and crush it.
So yeah, if you've already forgotten, don't forget to jump on and have a look at the. We've got a great prize pack to give away, and what you need to do is make sure you put your favourite Rapala lure to catch a flathead on. So, as I said, the prize pack, it's a great thing. It's got heaps of Crush Cities. It's got some VMC jig heads, Crush City shirt, Crush City hat. So definitely go over. Go into Facebook or YouTube and put down your favourite Rapala lure to catch a flathead on.
Yep, and also, like Mick and Mel, you guys have covered it so well that there haven't been any questions yet. So if you've got any questions at all, put it into the comment line and we'll do our best to answer them. Or Mick and Mel will do their best to answer them at the end of the show. So let's jump over to a couple of pro staff that we've talked to, both Jason and Paul this week, on their tips.
G'day everyone, Mitch here from Rapala VMC Australia. We've got Jason Didio, our Rapala Pro staffer, and we're talking all things flathead on bait, particularly VMC hooks. Jace, thanks for coming on, mate.
Yeah, no worries at all, Mitch. Glad to be back.
Yeah, back, mate. Last time we had you with a brim, mate. Now this segment we're all talking about flathead, mate, and I know you've got a fair bit of experience with flatties down your area, mate.
Yeah. So down on the mid-north coast, we're pretty gifted down there. So, keen to get into it.
Yeah, no, well, let's kick it off, mate. So, targeting flathead, what's sort of before we, dive into hooks and stuff, what's your sort of primary baits that you mainly like to use for flathead?
So, mainly live bait for myself, live herring, live potty mullet. But then if I'm to venture off and start using dead baits, strip mullet, I should talk into the live bait more. Live yabbies, if you can get live prawns, also really good.
Yep.
But for the dead bait, strip mullet, like prawns and pilchards, all that type of stuff. Big variety. White bait's another big one for fishing along breakwalls and that type of stuff. You get decent sized white bait, always go well.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, yep. So, like, sort of having the variance between live bait if you're able to get it, and then just your dead baits and stuff like that. That's pretty readily available in most stores and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. Okay, cool. No, well, it sort of gives a bit of an idea of the baits and stuff. So they're not sort of too fussy. A wide range of between your crustaceans or your fish flesh or liveys. They'll eat it all.
Exactly, mate. They'll eat it all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's handy for a lot of people. So mate, when we're just dive a bit more into with the hooks and stuff. So, like, if you want to find a couple of categories that you're really confident with flathead, what's the sort of VMC hooks that you mainly use, mate? On the
So
baits.
So I like my suicide octopus hooks mainly. Like that's primarily my favourite go-to hook.
Yep.
Although if I'm venturing out into using the yabbies or prawns or something like that, I don't mind running the long shank hook or the bent worm hook, something like a little bit longer in length, a little bit thinner profile. Seems to match that style of bait a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if you're fishing off the beach, it's a good thing. Run a set of gangs with a pilchard, fishing them gutters and stuff like that. You never know. You might get tail to come through and certainly still get a good hookup rate on the flathead as well.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. So that's something that probably not a lot of people really use for flathead is gang hooks, but yeah, like good as particularly your longer baits, just that presentation using your VMC gang hooks, particularly with swivels, just how they float in the water and how they drift down on the bottom and stuff.
Exactly right. And you get an unweighted, like nice strip of mullet, drift that down into the current over the edge of the sand flats where it drops off. Then gang hooks really go well on them longer strip baits as well, and the flathead just absolutely come up and nail it. So
Yeah.
definitely don't rule out gang hooks when it comes to flathead. That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you use many circle hooks for flathead?
Personally, no, Mitch. I haven't really specifically targeted flathead on circles. I've got them bycatch fishing for bream.
Yep.
But me personally, I'm more of a octopus style hook guy when I'm targeting flathead. That's for sure.
Yep. And you're mainly just running black nickel hooks, mate? You don't go between tin red and black nickel and perm
I've
steel?
used them all. I've used the tin reds, and mate, there's no difference. You'll catch fish on all, so don't be afraid. My just personal favourite's black nickel. And I just stick with that, but the tin red, they all work.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, nice. No, that's good, mate. It's handy to sort of know sort of all the different hook styles for each bait because each hook style has a purpose for the certain baits that you're using to target flathead.
Yeah, 100%. It all comes down to presentation in the water. That's what I bring it down to.
Yep. Okay, cool. Well, mate, now speaking about presentation, I think that we should then carry on to, what's the best way when you're sort of targeting flathead? What are you sort of looking for before you even cast your bait out?
Structure is definitely a big thing. If you can find some type of structure, whether it be a sandy drop off, rock walls, tree in the water, pylons, jetties, anywhere where that bait's going to hold up, that's where your predatory fish are going to sit right on the edge. So you got to have some form of structure, no matter where you're fishing. That's for sure. Don't just fish out in the open. Try and find something.
Yeah, okay. And you usually find, Jason, that you get a lot more flathead or concentrated. Like if you do find a bit of structure like a drop off or a jetty, there will be numerous flathead around.
100%. Yeah. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like if you're fishing that open area, just in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing there to hold bait, you will stumble across the odd one. But like if you're fishing around a jetty or rock wall, somewhere that's predominantly going to hold that bait area, you'll get more of a congregation of fish. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. Okay. And so with the different areas, is there like certain areas where you'll use certain baits? Like would you use a jetty on your jetties or your sand drop offs and stuff like that? Does that sort of give you an idea of what bait to use?
Yeah. So again, in the river, if I'm fishing the upper reaches, especially in my area, we get a lot of herring in the upper reaches of the river. I'll tend to use a lot more herring up there, like live herring, dead or alive, than what I would use in mullet. Like I certainly wouldn't go down to the bottom end of the river and pump yabbies and take them back up there, specifically targeting flathead either. So you kind of have a bit of an idea on what bait and what they're feeding on in that area will definitely give you a lot better chance at catching that fish. That's for sure.
Yeah, right. Okay, cool. No, that's good to know, mate. Mate, what's three of over your experiences of targeting flathead? What's sort of three sort of tips that you'd give a lot of beginners that are going out, chasing flathead for the first time? What's three tips that you'd sort of give those people to sort of before they get in the water get a bit of an idea of how to target flathead and what you sort of seen over the years?
Yeah, so just kind of more look where you're fishing. Really pay attention to your rigs. I don't like running a sinker straight, especially if you're using a live bait. Don't run a sinker straight to the hook because that sinker will bury your livey into the ground. It won't let him go free. So run and ball sinker to a swivel. Give yourself a 30-meter trace and let that livey, even dead bait, because what a dead bait will do running a rig like that, it'll let it drift around in the current.
Yep.
And flathead will come up underneath that bait, and that's how they'll attack from underneath. So I'm definitely not a believer on having that bait sitting solid on the ground. That's probably the best tip that I can give somebody. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So and I like especially over sandy drop-offs. If you're going to do there, again, little to no weight, I'm more than happy just to throw a yabby out and let it drift off, especially if you've got a run out tide coming off the flats, and let that natural yabby just go over and they'll come up and eat it off there. Bobby cork's another good one.
Okay.
Just drifting your live baits down under a bobby cork with no weight on it. I've caught multiple big flathead doing that.
Yeah, righto. So they're not afraid to come up and eat your baits up a bit off the bottom.
Definitely not. I've seen flathead come up and eat a bait off the surface in 2 meters of water.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely not uncommon.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, righto. What's your second tip, mate?
Oh, look. Good
Could
hook.
be anything. Could be like tides or anything like that, mate. Like any factors like that.
Different areas, different tides. So
Yep.
depending on where you're trying to fish and what time of day. Personally, if I was to target flathead, I'd be more looking on a run out tide, fishing the drop offs. So if you've got a nice big sandy gravel bank or sand bank or mud bank, fish them drop offs. The entrances of little creeks on the outgoing tide, fish the entrances of the creeks so that the predatory fish are sitting there waiting for them to come out. So run out tide seems to be the go-to for me when it comes to chasing flathead, especially on them drop offs.
Yep.
Yeah, and third one, pressure systems. I like to fish a high and a rising barometer.
Okay.
So
Yep.
when it comes to weather, and this will go for nearly all fish, mate, nearly all of my fishing's done off the barometer. I don't like fishing a dead set low, steady barometer.
Yep.
If it's rising or it's high, like anything from 1,015 and above, you'll have your best chance, I reckon.
Yeah, righto. Okay. Yep. Oh, there you go, mate. Just real quick before we finish it up, what's something that you'd sort of find like when you're trying to target some big flathead? What's something that you've noticed with big flathead behaviour that you can be able to target those big girls?
Good size live bait.
Yep.
Definitely. If you want to get a big flathead live bait, I would definitely put the time in to try and go and catch yourself some potty mullet live herring. Another thing I should have put in my tips is if you've got no tide, if you're fishing in an area that there's not much run, put your live bait on, hook him in the back so he's swimming away, especially if you've got him under a bobby cork. If you're fishing in current, make sure you hook that front hook. It's got to be through the nose. So he's in swimming into the tide. You're not going to drown that bait. Otherwise, it's going to sit down in the current doing helicopters.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay.
yeah, that's another good point. I should have brought up before, but I just thought about it then.
That's all good. At least you brought it up in the video, mate. So no, it's good. No, awesome, mate. No, I think that's pretty much. I reckon that's pretty much everything for this segment. I really appreciate you coming on and sort of showing a bit of insight and all your tips and that to target flathead over the years, mate. Really do appreciate it.
Not a problem at all. Yeah, just don't overcomplicate things, guys. Just keep it simple. Don't hold your baits on the bottom. Use good quality terminal tackle too. You know, you hook that fish of a lifetime. You don't want your gear letting you down. So stick into the BMC hooks, swivels, something that you know's got plenty of years behind them, and strength, and you won't go wrong.
Yep, that sounds good, mate. No, I appreciate your time, Jace. Thanks, mate. Thanks for
All right,
coming
Nick.
on, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Not a problem at all. Take it easy. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
So as you know, this is a episode on flathead fishing, and I thought what better person to bring along to talk about our southern species of flathead is the man himself, Paul Worsling. You may know him from iFish. Thanks for coming on, mate.
Absolute pleasure. Obviously, you called Jet and he was at school, so you had to put up with me.
Yeah, no. Obviously, a lot of people will be very familiar with your face, but as I said, we really wanted to bring you on to sort of touch base a bit more about the southern species of flathead, because obviously we're based up here in Queensland, and generally a lot of our shows are based around that. So I thought I'd bring you on and have a chat about flathead. So starting off, why do you reckon about flathead? It'd probably have to be up there with one of the most iconic fish as far as what the average person can go and target. Is it the same down there in Victoria?
I think it is, and I think they get overlooked a bit, which is really, really sad because you've got 100 kilo bluefin tuna and 10 kilo snapper and big giant squid. All these other things sort of detract from the humble old flathead, and he's much maligned. But I remember as a kid, there's a bloke called Flathead Freddie Bays, and he used to go flathead fishing with the old Mr. Twister. And I had sleepless nights dreaming that one day I might hook a 90+ centimetre flathead. I went to his house as a kid and I saw all these big monsters on the wall, and there is something very, very, very special. Like when you think about fishing, the actual art of fishing and catching a fish and taking it from the water and seeing it and touching it, I think the flathead is probably the one that really gets me, because you can be in 2 inches of water and hook a 7 kilo, 1 metre beast.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be a multi-millionaire. You could do it in the hand line. You could be pulling in a little brim, an undersized brim you've caught on a prawn, and the monster flathead eats it. What's been interesting for me, it's changed so much. Like I try to say to Jet, because when you're in your own little area and timeline, people tend to forget the past. But when we were kids, mate, the only soft plastic or flathead lure in the country was a white Mr. Twister. That was it. Maybe black if you were lucky. So now we've got such a plethora of lures, and we just fish with them so differently. I think it's made them even more special. And I reckon if I had to say top 3 things that I'd like to do as an angler at present, flathead be in the top 3, guaranteed, and hopefully forever, because I see myself as an old man doing plenty of it.
Yeah, I think probably that's one of the best things about flatty, as you sort of touch base, is it's probably one of the first ones that most people, when they go lure fishing especially, that's one of the fish that you'll go and target first, and they're accessible to everyone. So that's probably one of the reasons why it's such a popular species. And a lot of people always, when you see a flathead picture on social media or anything like that, it always gets a lot more likes than a lot of other fish, you know.
It does. There's something about them. They are a dead set crocodile. And I've got fishing goals, and I assume you have fishing goals. And one that I've never ever ticked off, and I've done a lot of fishing, is I'd like to catch a metre flathead.
Yep.
And I said to someone recently, there'd be more people have caught 1,000-pound black marlin in Australia than have caught metre flathead, like probably 100 times more. So it's a rare species, and I think to get that, you're going to have to fish southern New South Wales or in Victoria. That's your best chance. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but has a metre flathead ever been caught in Queensland that you've heard of?
Not that I know of. And I was going like up here, we're about to have the Flathead Classic to come on here, and I've fished it for a long time with my dad, and then obviously with some mates, and now my partner, but no one's ever caught a metre flathead in the Classic either. And that's been running for like, I think this is close to like 30 years, 25 years or something like that. No one's ever caught one.
Yeah,
I
so
know
your
a lot
place,
of people have caught 99s and stuff. My biggest is only 94, but obviously I'd like to travel south to try and get one, because I think that's where a lot of those metre fish do come from, like southern Sydney down through to Victoria and all that kind of stuff.
So while we're on this, what's the biggest flathead you've ever heard of? Because I've heard of one, and I believe the guy because he has no reason to lie. But what's the longest one you've ever heard of?
I've only really heard of like 110, sort of 114, I think, is like the biggest one I've heard of.
So a mate who I trust, I won't say his name because you'll get hate mail, guarantees me that when he, like 25, 30 years ago, but as a young bloke, he got one at just under 1.30 meters.
Jeez.
And I have no reason to disbelieve this guy. He's the big flathead whisperer. Like when I wanted to catch a big one years ago, I went with him and I got a 92 in a day's filming, and that's pretty special.
Yeah.
And he said he's got a photo. He's going to try and find it for me. And I don't disbelieve it because I've seen some big, I call them magic carpets. You're sitting there fishing, next thing old Aladdin's magic carpet comes off the bottom and starts cruising along. And when you see that, the heart gets going. So as fishermen, we think we've seen it all, think we know it all, but any fish over a metre has got to be the holy grail, and I will fish and fish and fish until I find that fish, eh?
Oh, 100%. And that's one of those funny things when you talk about that. Those big fish, they're not as spooky as the little ones. They don't get off and take away. They just get up and just slowly cruise away. They're pretty cool. So up here in Queensland, obviously this time of year is probably our big fish time of year. So spring, coming into springtime. Down in Victoria, sort of, if you want to target one of those trophy size fish, what's sort of the time of year that?
So it's all about the warmth. So we don't obviously have the warm water you have. So the big fish are there in winter, but they just don't feed. I reckon they slip off into the deep water and hibernate or eat very little.
Mm-hmm.
But we're just coming into it now. So basically your best time frame will be October, pushing through Christmas, school holidays, absolute belter, hot water, and then all the way, if you want to push the extremities, into April.
Yep.
So your peak's going to be December, January, February, but you can push it either side. And we're going to spend some time next year fishing winter as well, because like all things, those fish are still going to eat once a month, whatever it is. So we think we can find them, but they are definitely your peak times.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not so much about the peak time, other than for me, having the right fishing conditions in your peak time. So what we do, we know that we already know December, January is going to be peak. But we also know that that's a very busy time in holiday areas where flathead are found, like Malakuta, Tamboon, Tyres, all those areas, lakes. So you've got to try and plan around weekends, because if you've got water skis and all that stuff, it's going to make it hard. And you need good conditions.
Yeah.
If you've got more than sort of 10 knots, it makes flathead fishing very, very difficult. So we'll actually look for windows of weather where you know you're going to get 3 days in a row, 2 days of 5 knots.
Yep.
And we will specifically fish the weather over moons, tides, every other factor. That's what does it for us.
Yeah. So when talking about that, is with as far as weather, are you looking for those real sunny days as well, where the fish move up and sort of sun themselves in that real shallow water, similar to up here?
In a perfect world, I would want like 25 to 30 degrees without a breath of wind, but trying to manage all that's very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the best flathead days fishing, and we've only been doing this hardcore, Jet and I, for really 18 months. He decided you wanted to go and target a big flathead, as you do, like you've got your fishing goals. And he got really good at it really quickly. And he did that all through hard work on his own, just found the spots, worked it out. And the best morning we had, we'd gone away and we literally had from 7 till 11 to fish before we went home. We tried new ground.
Yep.
First cast, he got a 92. This was all in 60 centimetres of water or less, basically taking surface and subsurface. And I think we got 15 fish that morning, and I've added over 10 metres in length for the 15, like lots of 80s, 86s, 87s. We lost count. And that was in horrible, overcast, cloudy, almost rain conditions. So you don't need the sun.
Yep.
Our fish will be where they're going to find food, no matter what the conditions, if you're there the right time of year.
Yep. So as far as tides, like up here, we obviously try and target those fish in the shallows on the top of the tide. Is it similar down there, or they don't have big tidal movements down there as much, do you?
No. So a lot of the areas we're fishing, we don't even have any tides. So if you go to Malakuta or Bem River or Tyres, a lot of the time those entrances are closed.
Yeah.
So you're literally fishing, for want of a better term, a still stagnant piece of water. So that changes so much too, because I know you guys fish a lot of pressure points and current. We don't find generally, and this is just me and Jet and what we do, but we don't find fish where there's tide. We find a lot of our fish where there is, like, you drop a peeled prawn in the water, it'll sink straight to the bottom in 2 meters of water.
Yeah.
So sometimes that works, sometimes you find a bit more tide, but so it's really more about finding where they're going to sit and ambush to find prey.
Yeah.
So we will look for our bait. But the other big one, when you catch a big flathead or a nice fish, what I like to do is just go over, and because you always figure out approximately where you hooked him, like you'll know it was 10 metres from the boat that direction. I'll go over quite often, just have a look at what the bottom looked like where he was.
Yep.
And then I'll use that for that area only, because sometimes I'll sit on weed in one area, then they'll sit on white sand in another area. So, but for that bank, I'll go, you know what? He was sitting between 3 clumps of weed, all about a metre apart. So I'll then use that as I see that down the road. I'll keep fishing that area. And the other thing too, when you do spook a fish, which happens when you're on the electric,
Yeah.
I will definitely go back. I'll mark it, and I'll go back later in the day, 2-3 hours later, and quite often catch that fish because he'll still be there. And the other interesting thing, like all fish, the hardest thing about big flathead is finding them. When you find one, you normally find multiple fish. Very, very rare you catch one. And we've had days where we fish from 7 in the morning till 6 at night, like big days, not found the fish till 5 o'clock at night, and then turned a day with nothing into 5 to 10 metres of flathead all of a sudden. So you've just got to keep working, finding work, like all fishing, and no one's going to hand it to you. And sometimes, like all things too, they are where you least expect them. You just go, what are these fish doing here?
Yeah. So when you're actually targeting those fish, like bait wise, are you like up here? If you're going to target big fish, we're using obviously a lot larger style lures, or you generally find you can catch them on just obviously our soft baits, our crush cities, or is it more your bigger hard bodies or something like that?
So I reckon this. I'm going to hold it up because this I reckon is the best flathead hard body ever made. Now, without notice, Rapala. I won't make you guess because you've got about 4,000 lures in the range. But this thing here,
Oh, the ripstop.
Ripstop Minnow, OMG. I'll tell you how good this thing is. I was filming at Malakuta a few years ago with Craig Ingham from Fisheries, and they're doing some great work. We had to catch flathead and then give them to Fisheries, and they went up and they bred them, and then they put hundreds of thousands of flathead back in the lakes. Craig said, I'm going to use this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good, mate. I'll use a plastic. I said to Craig, do not cast until the camera's rolling, we say go. Yeah. Next thing, I'm on. Okay, Craig, we haven't started yet. That's how good this lure is. And that's when I realised just how good it was. So I will always have a rod in the boat with a ripstop minnow. This one and its baby brother, they just catch fish because in 30 centimetres of water, you can just tweak it down. It'll slowly come up, tweak it down. And for some reason, they love the kick of that tail. So that hard body, absolute gem. Sometimes I'll throw a smaller hard body, even, this is random, even like a floating rainbow trout, like trout type lure, like just or a jointed 9, just something to get down a little bit. But sometimes I want to eat small. So I'll play around with all that. And then even like glide baits.
Yep.
These things, so good. And don't worry about the colour too much. Obviously, that one's a brown trout. But the thing about these is they just sleek along and you can just work areas and you actually see the fish come up and eat it, which is, for me...
I reckon that's what I reckon the best part about fishing glide baits and all that kind of stuff is a lot of the time it's your visual take. You'll obviously see the thing either like get up behind it, and let the lure sit back down on the bottom. You twitch it again, then it'll follow again. So that's a pretty awesome.
There's enough time and it's clear enough. You can actually say to your mate, "Check this out," and you can watch it together. I mean, that's pretty 100%. Cool. And then you see the eat, and you try not to cast too hard and pull it out of his mouth. So I love that sort of stuff. But we fish 3 rods. So Jet and I pretty much have 6 rods between us, 3 each, and we'll have our ripstop on one every time. We'll have some sort of glide bait, but always a soft plastic. And it's funny, like, when you go flatty fishing, you're thinking straight away, you got to have something big, that's starting to get there. But even this, like that's an average size mullet colour. It's a good lure, heavy. It catches fish. But I've caught so many big flathead. Don't underestimate this stuff.
Yeah, that's my favourite stuff. I catch a lot of fish on them. Yeah.
I don't know why, but that prawn, and you've got to work the prawn really slow. Right. Like when you go prawning, you watch prawns in the estuary. They're doing this. They're not going, they're just wandering along. So you work that nice and slow. And this thing here, the jerk, I've caught so many fish on that. And we discussed this, and you and I talked a lot. These jig heads, mate, how good are they for hanging on to that TPE plastic?
Yeah, 100%. And that, as you know, that's the reason behind that whole pin system and all that was to hold those baits. And some people like, as I say, especially flatty fishers, the retrieve on some of the soft plastics can be quite aggressive. So having that pin system on that jig head's awesome.
Yeah, and when you speak of the pin system, like there's a little forward-facing pin there, which I don't know if you can see, but that little bit of wire is what holds the plastic on. Nothing worse when you're whipping your plastic, which you do in deeper water, and it comes up all curled, and every time you've got to fix it. So that's been a game changer. And generally when flathead fishing with plastics, I go against the rules a bit because normally when people say soft plastics, they go, "Oh, always use the lightest jig head possible for the scenario." But I don't mind even going to something this big, like that's 14 grams,
Yeah.
because I actually like this.
Boom.
I
Yeah,
like
that's
that
right.
thud.
Bit
And
of
I
puff
want to,
of sand.
yeah, especially when I'm in like 2, 3, even 4 meters of water fishing the edge, and they
Yep.
will come off sometimes during the day onto that edge. Cast it out, and you actually want it to go bang and hit the bottom, and
Yep.
just let the fish know they can feel that in their lateral line. So I'll go heavier, and then when I'm fishing some of these smaller plackies, I'll actually go down to a much lighter jig head, and for want of a better term, finesse it and know
Yeah.
that it's getting very close to the bottom, but maybe not even hitting it.
Yep.
And on the tough days, like I'm talking, we all have tough days. We've had days down in Far East Gippsland where we fished from 7 in the morning, as I said, till 4 in the afternoon and not got a bite. The wind's blowing the wrong way. We can't fish the areas we want to fish. I just go down to those small plastics,
Yeah.
and it's amazing how often I'll flick it out. You do the first flick and you go, "Oh, I'm snagged." And then all of a sudden that snag starts moving. You go,
Yeah.
"Oh my God." And the amount of times I've pulled that off and Jet just goes, "You're a freak." Um, and, and you're pulling these fish which are mid-80s.
Mm.
It's just crazy. And of course, the great thing about fishing those smaller plastics too, and the whip, very, 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 very rare we've ever hooked a fish inside the mouth.
Yeah.
Like always just hooked in the lip, top of the lip. The other interesting one about flathead, you will sometimes hook them underneath, like on the chest. And I never quite understood this, but a bloke I fish with explained to me that a lure will sit on the bottom and the flathead will actually come and do this to try and kill the mullet. You whip and you get him under here. And I've actually seen it on the surf when I was casting a fly once. I had a big flathead, 75. I actually watched him sit on top of the fly trying to kill it.
Yep.
So sometimes you get them under there and you think you've got the meter 50 on, but it's just hooked underneath. That's why you're foul hooking those fish. But you've got to have all the string. Some days every fish is on the ripstop.
Yep.
Some days everything's on a glider, and some days you just can't catch a fish. You've got to go to the plastic. And I don't know. Look, big plastics are okay because you think big fish. But if I had to catch a big flathead to save myself, I'd be fishing something about that big. I don't know why. You just elephants eat peanuts, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. So we've talked a lot about big fish, like schooling fish down there, and obviously, the average punter sort of that's the fish that they want to sort of go and get for a table, like for a feed. Like you down that way, same sort of scenario. You're fishing the same areas, or you're just more fishing those drop offs and.
Yeah, so we've got a situation at the moment, and it's really, really weird. Where let's just say the last 100 flathead we've caught, I think 2 have been under 55.
Yeah,
it's an incredible fishery. Like they've got slot limits in place now, so the big fish have to go back, and that's been going on long enough now. So and people will look after them, but there are a lot of estuary systems where you do get those smaller fish, and it's exactly the same. Those smaller fish again love the ripstop, just love it. They love a smaller lure that you just slow roll.
Yep.
Really easy, just cast it out. Just something gets down a metre, 2 metres, depending on the depth. Just nice, slow roll, bang. And obviously your vibes are very good.
Yeah.
I do a little bit with Rapala vibes, particularly those nice rattly ones that the bonefishers love to chew on. I know they don't sell really well, those vibes, but man, they catch some big fish.
Yeah.
And you can slow roll them, you can vibe, you can even jig them as you're going along.
Yeah.
The name of that vibe escapes me right now. Mick, can you remember which one it is?
The rip and wrap?
That's the one, thank you.
Yep.
It was on the tip of my tongue. I mean, Jet and I have both caught world record bonefish on rip and wraps. We love them.
Yep.
They catch everything. It's snapper in the bay, but the rip and wrap is a great general flatty lure. And then when you're fishing flathead, those smaller ones, I do prefer the slightly heavier jig head.
Yep.
Just to let them know you're there. And obviously your smaller plastics, and they do love your little paddle tails, like sort of that smaller 3-inch, even 2-inch size.
Yep.
And you can catch multiple numbers of fish. The biggest problem we have is trying to get a feed of flathead. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
Unless, when you're talking duskies, of course, if you want to go to Port Phillip Bay, you can catch plenty of sandies and smaller stuff. But that traditional lure chucking where you're finessing and working, probably more your system, like your Malakuta has a wider variety of size of fish.
Mm-hmm.
And then your lake, probably your Marlow area is pretty good for size. And then your Bem is very good for a wide variety of fish. But the thing is, when you cast, you just don't know if it's going to be 30 or 100. And that's the exciting thing for me.
Nah, very good. So I reckon we've sort of touched enough base on it. thanks for coming on. And as I said, we really wanted to showcase to obviously everyone out there that the fishery that is down in the southern parts of Australia, because as I've heard from you and other people, it is probably one of the prime areas to go and target some of those really big fish. So thanks for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. But yeah, obviously when you start getting some of those big flathead, definitely flick those photos this way, mate.
I might flick a few pics here to put on the end of this just to show people what we're talking about, because it's hard. That biggest problem you have is trying to take another flathead photo when you catch fish that doesn't look the same as the last monster. Like I'm saying to Jet, we need to wear different clothes every trip, because if you wear the same hat and the same shirt, they just think it's the same fish. But we're very lucky. Our fish grow very slowly because of the cold water. So I'm told a 95 in Victoria versus a 95 in Queensland, our fish may be 2 kilos heavier.
Oh yeah.
And when you get them and they're like that wide and that, it's just absolutely amazing. It's so exciting. And I'm just glad that in Victoria we've actually got something that's actually good. It could be the first and only thing, mate.
No, you got plenty of stuff down there. But yeah, as I said, awesome. Thanks for the chat, mate. And we'll catch up.
Awesome, mate. Absolutely pleasure to talk soon.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Well, there were some great tips there from both Paul and Jason, and I'm sure to catch a few more flathead next time I go out. And the winner is Mick.
Yeah, so tonight's winner of our awesome prize pack, Crush City VMC, is Tony West. Tony West said a ripstop in purple descent. So thanks for that, Tony, mate. If you want to shoot a message to us on either Facebook or YouTube, our marketing team will get in touch with you, mate, and we'll get that prize pack away to you. So,
and a quick thank you to pro staffer Mel, Mick's much better half, for coming in today and giving some great tips on flathead fishing. Thanks for coming in, Mel.
You're welcome.
And we'll see all you guys next month.